All right, everyone, welcome to Vicky 3 Academy. I'm Walker, and here we are discussing colonization and colonization laws. So I want to very briefly discuss colonization laws. I don't think they're nearly as complicated as some of the other ones. There's a little bit of finesse here, but largely it basically just boils down to, do you want to colonize or not? And if you do, then you do need to budget the bureaucracy for your institution, because keep in mind that what this is going to do is it's going to create an institution for you, right? Enables the colonial affairs institution. Every institution has a bureaucracy cost associated with it, and so if you start as someone like Austria and you want to participate in colonization, you do need to budget for it. But if you start as someone like Great Britain, then you already have a colonization law in place. You can hem and haw about whether or not you should switch, but it's almost never worth it to switch just because law work is important, and the difference between these is pretty small. This one makes for a higher migration attraction in unincorporated states. So if you want to encourage good Englishmen to move out to whatever colony you have set up in the middle of nowhere, then resettlement will do that. And then exploitation, on the other hand, has these economic differences, so it reduces the subsistence output, which means that the pops are going to be weaker while they're living in unincorporated states until you can build buildings for them to work on. But in exchange, once you've done so, you get a throughput bonus. God, I'm not this is the third shot. I'm not reshooting. The tension decay is also really useful. And why would the tension decay be useful? Well, it's because of the nature of colonization and what it does. So what does colonization do? Colonization allows you to interact with decentralized nations. So normally whenever you interact with a nation, you have to, use a normal diplo play, which requires you to have an interest in the area. And that diplo play is going to allow you to, start wars, to make dominions, or to conquer territory, or whatever. But you can't do that to decentralized nations, right? Because there's no leadership for you to capitulate. Most of the decentralized nations are going to represent nomadic pastoralists or subsistence farmers living in essentially decentralized in unorganized states, and that means that it's easy for your colonists, which are your civilians, kind of pushing into the area to set up shop. But tension is them getting mad that you are setting up shop in their backyard. And so if tension gets high enough, they will revolt, which is where you see a decentralized nation fight against a centralized nation, because there was colonization going on and the tension got really high. And that revolt right now in 1.0.6 results in the decentralized nation either annexing a whole bunch of territory and getting thick, which is where you get those screenshots of a giant Great Sioux nation, or they die. They get fully annexed in one war. And so it's pretty spooky. It allows you to annex territory really quickly if you're in colonial exploitation, but it does create infamy, so be aware of that. You balance those things as you wish. So that's the laws section. I'll put a timestamp here. So how do you actually do colonization? One, you can right click on the states where you think you have the interests, but you can also just do it through the Diplo lens. That's also very easy. Establish a colony. All right, so we can establish a colony. Let's start one in Patagonia. Why not? We have an interest here because we actually start with Falklands here, and that just allows us to have a vision over the region, because that's how the interests work, right? They're region based. La Plata includes this. We own land, therefore we have a vision here, and we can go ahead and we can colonize anywhere that we can reach. So that means that we can't colonize this interior area, right? We can't reach the state. But if we had colonized all of this territory and run up against Mendoza, then we could start colonizing in it. So we can start by going here, and you'll see that we have 55 days, they have 500 days, and they have 250 days. Wow, that's a big difference. Where's that difference coming from? Well, it's coming from colonial growth. So, colonial growth generated by Chile, it's 0.40% due to their incorporated population, and then it's split between one colony. So they are getting 0.2 per million people. I'm going to guess that means that they probably have... Yep, they have a level 2 institution. Argentina, they've got their level 2 institution. Why are they growing so slowly? Oh, they have a very small pop. That's why. Yeah, very, very small pop. So you see they have incorporated population. Incorporated population is the thing that's going to determine how quickly you colonize, because that's going to determine your base colonial growth. And then that's going to be here, let's see. You can see what the rate is. It's 0.2 per 1 million people. So if you increase your institution, you will increase that rate, but it's still coming out of your incorporated pop, and then it's being split between two colonies. And that's because I have one colony growing here and one colony growing here. And this colony, you'll see, is growing really slowly because of malaria. That's the other really big thing when it comes to colonization. It's not just how to set up colonies, but also where to set up colonies and when to prioritize them. And that is mostly going to be defined by malaria, I think. Colonizing in malaria areas before you get to quinine is largely not profitable because it's so slow. And so if you want to do that sort of colonization, then you want to pick up pharmaceuticals and quinine very quickly, because that is, especially as a great power, that's only going to set you back like 4 to 6 years, depending on whether or not you start with like empiricism or medical degrees, which hopefully you start with both of those. You don't even need empiricism to get there. You just need medical degrees. What are these lines, Paradox? What are these lines? It's so goofy, but pharmaceuticals to quinine is cute. And that's a really easy way to just get your colonization really jump started, because that'll allow you to colonize not just the areas that have malaria without problem, but it will allow you to colonize the areas that have severe malaria with problem. You'll still have issues colonizing in the severe malaria areas with quinine, so I would focus on the other ones first. But some of these are really important, and the sooner you can get them sealed off from the enemy, the better, because they're just outrageous amounts of resources here. I don't want to go too far into it, but you can just click around, right? There's, wow, 32 coal, 40 coal, 46 coal. Like, if you want to succeed in Victoria 3, then my recommendation is always make sure you have as much iron and coal and wood as you can get your hands on. And there's an absolute ridiculous amount of it here. And depending on how many decentralized native uprisings you have to fight, you might not even need to get that much infamy to conquer all of this stuff. So how do you do colonization? How do you prioritize it? That one is kind of still up in the air, but I think that largely colonization is incredibly powerful, especially right here. There are some other really good ones. If you just desperately need pops, then there's like a lot of pops here, just like kind of waiting for a big strong centralized nation to come through and pick them up. Some of them are not necessarily particularly populous right now, but again, it's all about those resources. Although, boy, South Island is pretty sad. South Island is pretty sad. But yeah, that's colonization. I think it's pretty straightforward. But if you still have any questions, let me know. Go ahead and post them in the chat. This is Walker. This is Vicky 3 Academy. Take care.